Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with our first grand finalist, the reigning world champion Terran, the Protoss in the blue. It is Clem. And looking for his back-to-back Homestory Cup championships, the Admiral, we have GuMiho in a best-of-5 Protoss versus Terran showdown, with Clem sparing us from the tragedy of a mirror matchup in the grand finals. And if you appreciate his commitment, it'd be awesome if you could show the algorithm by smashing that like button. Or maybe even subscribing. And Jimmy, what are we at? Jimmy, 1,485 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And while either of these two are still playing, I'll probably do it anyways. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you've had a good day so far, and hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. Clem, not just trolling here. Earlier in the tournament, he lost pretty decisively to GuMiho in Terran versus Terran, who also defeated Maru as well. So GuMiho, the strategical mastermind, clearly has a grasp on how to beat his own race. But Protoss, on the other hand, has always been a weak point for him. Whereas Clem had recently reached, with the new patch, rank 1 on the European ladder. Or at least the rank 1 Protoss, I'm not sure which it is. Apparently over max packs. And also, that might put him as the best Protoss in the world who physically shows up to tournaments. So between losing to GuMiho in TVT and being that competent at Protoss, I actually think this isn't just for funsies and to keep a mirror matchup out, but we may have reached the legitimate time with Raynor and Clem especially, these mechanically incredible players, that players will pick another race against some opponents. And we may actually have to write that into the rule book at some point, some limitations on it, or rules around it. For now, it is limited to Raynor and Clem, but we'll have to see how it goes, as we may be reaching a new kind of level of StarCraft 2. First adepts come in, 2 of them knocking out the Reapers, but GuMiho kind of just using the TVT build with Reaper Hellion to start things off, making sure the adepts can't get the damage done. With the new patch and energy recharge instead of shield battery overcharge, you might have thought, like, maybe some players will use sentries or phoenixes or oracles early, but against Terran there is no substitute for going blink stalkers. And Clem being on the receiving end of the best blink stalkers in the world for, well, pretty much every small to medium tournament finals for like the last year and a half. Name a more iconic duo than Clem and Max Packs in the finals of weekly tournaments. You can't. But blink stalkers by far the best way to keep the pressure on the Terran and not allow them to really get any sort of map control. And if you don't go blink, you find yourself in a very awkward spot against a lot of early pushes. Like Stargate can work, but it mostly relies on the Terran being a bit out of position. Whereas blink, there sometimes is no good position. You just have to sit back with your siege tanks and try to mitigate the damage. And for a player like Clem, whose micro is second to literally none, it doesn't really matter too much what units you use, but how you use them. There's a tank in that medevac. That's not a cyclone, that's a tank. Who does a what? What is this Bronze League bullshit? What? He's just got a tank. He's got a Hellion and a Reaper looking to get some damage done in the middle line. Alright, well, he blunks on top of it, and the damage is pretty easily mitigated. Reaper Hellion actually kills 5 probes. Make that 6. Reaper's still going. The blink stalkers knock it away. Clem ends up losing 6 probes, 1 stalker, and the medevac gets out. Who drops a tank? Well, that was an interesting start. The problem is, now Clem has a bunch of blink stalkers, and GuMiho has 1 tank. That medevac surviving is a huge deal. Having the ability to patch up the Marines at all in this sort of scenario is incredibly meaningful, because the blink stalkers will certainly be trying to nickel and dime the Marines out of existence. Blunks forward, just goes straight for the tank and rips it away and gets out. Did he even lose a stalker? No. Raven on the other side, just 1 probe is not worth it. Gets to the natural, and without that tank, now Clem can just carve away the mineral line. If the bunker wasn't done, he may have just outright lost the game there, but finishes off in time. Charge is on the way. Another tank. on the low ground. I'm pretty sure an observer is close enough. Knocks out a few more, blinks the hurt stalkers back. Is the tank, it's just barely. He finds a nice corner to jam himself into and can still threaten these gas geysers. And maybe just blink away. Smoothly blinks out. The Raven still has energy. Observer? One observer taken down, but have we had second observer? Well. And while GuMiho might know it's there, that doesn't necessarily stop him. Did he spot the tank? He's making sure if he blinks in. Wait, does he have enough vision to get out of tank range? Clem's so active with these stalkers. He knows that GuMiho, like, that feels almost offensive, sieging up your observer like that. Shield battery behind the mineral line. Seems to still be working out just fine. Interesting positioning. A medevac drop. Observer still overhead, but 8 Marines. That's not even 8, 7 Marines. Either way, enough to easily kill probes. And 7 probes, 8 probes. He doesn't even have stim, but does he need it? A single pylon powering all this.
Who does that?
And might even get a sentry or two. Picks up the Marine, slurps him up into the medevac, and GuMiho's able to get out. Auto turret coming back in for more. Shield battery not quite close enough to protect all the probes. We'll lose, wow, 10 probes dead. Clem, though, did not retreat from the front. Not going to let GuMiho have any opportunities. He's taken a 4th Nexus. So he's just going to try to fight quality with quantity here. He has no splash damage on the way. He went for charge, is working on +1. Still has one of those gateways depowered, but with 4 bases, he can pump out enough probes, and it's still an awkward position for GuMiho to actually move out directly. The Blink Stalkers will be harrying him at every possible opportunity. The gateway count is up to 9 now, which is enough charge lots to easily overrun small groups of units and be a threat to the main army itself. Couple Stalkers getting taken down. Warp Prism's in position. Observer spots the medevac, and things are going to heat up once again. Comes in. Charge is already done, as is +1, so GuMiho going to be dragged back by Clem's Prism. It is a little hard for me to say the Protoss names alongside Clem's name as well, but I'm getting used to it, all right? I'm getting better. And even though the Stalkers have been pushed away, Clem using the Warp Prism, he knows better than most how annoying Warp Prisms can be. This Warp Prism is not necessarily for killing anything, but for anchoring enough army supply back at home that GuMiho can't come across and win outright. He needs to buy time for Colossi. That Warp Prism existing is the most valuable thing, and the Vikings may challenge it. There's still an observer in the main. More Marauders getting chased down. He's just going to sacrifice the Prism in order to get a bunch more charge lots. The Widowmine's a bit late. Force fields, not sure what they were meant to accomplish. More army in the middle. That Raven's still going. Marines making their way back. The charge lots are cleaned up. And the end result... Oh, nevermore. Okay, finally kills the Raven. The end result, Clem, down 20 supply. Oh my god! The mules just drop out of the sky onto the 3rd. GuMiho down a few workers, but he's managed to keep enough army together. And I feel like this is going to be the tab that looks a little interesting in a few seconds. We'll come back. But as those mules start to return their minerals, GuMiho going to be, well, in a pretty okay spot. There's only 1 Colossus. It doesn't have extended thermal lamps. Clem trying to fight forward, but the force fields are optimistic at best. Knocks out 1 Viking, but a lot of the gateway army has already been thinned out. Did Clem spend too much on the wrong side of the map in order to compete with this? Colossi already had its shield stripped away. Siege tank in position. He might be able to annex the 4th base now. Clem doesn't seem to want to sit back. He finished +2 weapons. Colossus moving forward. Force fields again. Trying to zone out for the Colossi. The Widowmine still hitting home, though. And GuMiho is closing in. He's got a lot of Marauders, as most of the Marines were already incinerated. The Marauders taking decent damage from the Colossi. It adds up over time, and the Medevacs are running low on energy. A scan. He spots the Observer. Only 1 or 2 Vikings. Clem knows he really doesn't want to give up that base, because then GuMiho's on the same economy with a better army composition. His only advantage now is the level of production. And GuMiho actually going to split off some of his units into a base drop. A triple drop headed towards the main. A lot of the production could be interrupted or destroyed. A single probe Clem, oh no, the map is dark and full of Terrans. He had no vision, it's just marauders. The buildings, oh, will not make it through this. The forge is going to be sniped off. Trying to take out the Vikings, target firing one after another of these units. The Nexus is dead, the forge is dead, and Clem just gonna turn this into a base trade. You can't recall medevacs. More probes will die. Clem, do or die. As he tries to move forward, another medevac almost takes it out. Nearly full. That could have been a big deal there. And still, Clem moving forward. He's actually recalling back to the natural. If he snipes off any of the, gets one full medevac. And actually the forge was not taken out. Not that that's a huge deal, but... Oh no, a Colossus left out on its own. The recall didn't quite catch it. And now, trying to scramble back to defend, but GuMiho knows the value of these medevacs. And, wow, he actually gets out with one. I think Clem, honestly, mitigated the damage about as well as you could. He lost his main, which is the least valuable base for mining. The only reason the main base is important is because of any tech there at this stage. Don't know if he'll try to rebuild it, but he's already expanding over to the right flank. And GuMiho, Fusion Core is on the way. But as much as I would love battle cruise, that's almost certainly for Caduceus. GuMiho loves Caduceus Reactor, and he should. Okay, it's a great upgrade that most Terrans, including Clem, neglect far too often. The ability to double your medevac energy regen means you don't need as many medevacs to get the job done. And you can focus on things like Vikings and Liberators. Devil Drop comes back in. Charge lots interrupting another base. Good angle for the Colossi, swiping through. And actually GuMiho kind of dividing and conquering himself here a bit. Another Guardian Shield. The main base, he denies +1 ground armor. But a bunch of bio units isolated and killed. And the medevacs aren't looking much better themselves. One more Stalker going to be warped in, trying to take out this Colossus. Not going to work out. But Clem just opened up a 20 supply lead as GuMiho. He got split in twain. A bunch of his bio army just ran off into the sunset. And it was very bright indeed with those extended Thermalance Colossi. Clem doing a great job of targeting the Vikings and minimizing the threat to the Colossi. And suddenly Clem, in game 1 of the Grand Finals with 5 Colossi on the field, GuMiho over-committing to the drops and under-committing back at home. It looks like Clem will go up 1-0. Well, maybe he made the right call on this one. GuMiho dropping the ball on the home defense, but Clem not all inning with the base trade, but deciding to give up his main and defend his natural was such a big and arguably risky call. So many times we see a base trade just keeps going. It just, both sides just keep going. And sometimes it becomes almost a near draw scenario. But Clem came back to defend eventually. And that was enough. He decided the main base wasn't worth it. Not when he could do some damage. And that kind of decision making. Well, one, knowing that trying to base trade a Terran is like a philosophical faux pas. And on top of that, he had the army to actually fight. GuMiho's main weakness is that later game micro. That is why he struggles in this matchup in particular. As we go into game 2, ley lines. Like, when you have to control more than just Marines, Marauders, and Medevacs, there's only one player in the world who makes it look easy. And he picked Protoss this time, so. And that wasn't even with Ghosts involved. He had Vikings, Marines, Marauders. GuMiho, it's impossible to tell exactly the position your opponent is in. You just have a good gauge of it. What I love was the single siege tank. I don't even know if it was worth it. I don't think it was. But just the casual 1 siege tank 4 Marine drop. What is that? It didn't really do anything. It distracted. I guess it distracted for a Reaper and a Hellion, which did actual damage. But that's kind of inexpensive. And not having that tank back at home clearly cost him some map control. So I seriously doubt Clem was expecting a tank to be sieging up in his main at that timing, but here we are. Eventually Clem holds on. And GuMiho is now behind. The probe being as annoying as possible. Arguably the most annoying unit in the game. Closely followed by Clem's Reapers. But in terms of individual cost to annoyance ratio, there's nothing that competes with the probe, obviously. The fact you can warp in the entire army effectively, or cannons, or what have you. It all comes from the probes. The root of all evil. Or so these balance patches seem to target. From my point of view, the Protoss are evil. Okay. Protoss don't respond because they don't have mouths. GuMiho expanding command center on the high ground. Doesn't want to get poked and prodded. Playing it very safe. Already has 2 gas up as well, so we'll see. We got the old Cyclone. I have a feeling. There's a tech lab. I guess it could be a single tank drop again. Doubt. Couple Marines on the way. Not going to be a Reaper pressure. And Clem opts for the Twilight Council. Almost certainly blank. There's a Cyclone. That Cyclone, incredibly hard to deal with by individual Protoss units. Just to mention, we're playing on tournament mod, so any of the bugs that made it to the ladder, which were surprisingly dramatic, are not relevant here. The Cyclone's still very strong in its stock version, though. You definitely don't want to overstay your welcome. Actually completes the shade in order to get a little bit more vision, keep the pressure on. Comes like, I have units, I will micro them, no matter how risky. He has to know the Cyclone is an option. And, well, GuMiho locks on to the Shading Adept, but is able to kill it. Does so much damage. And there's no getting away from it unless you're able to teleport or shade instantly. Loads it up. Blink is on the way. Robo as well. So Clem with a much more defensive, well, not more defensive, but the more defensive Blink style. Very similar to last game, though, in the results. Medevac already boosting across. Not sure if it'll be spotted. It will not, but it's almost implied. He knows the threat. There's only 3 Stalkers at the moment. So we'll see what kind of response. Wait, the Cyclone wasn't in it. It's just a bunch of Marines. Still dangerous. And without Blink, and with only 2 Stalkers, this is not... Well, he backs off. Doesn't want to risk the medevac going down to a warp and a Blink Stalkers. Still an odd fight. GuMiho just throwing something out there, keeping the pressure on. More depots. And this time the tanks will be back alongside the Cyclone. Well, assuming he doesn't just lose it. Goes forward. Cyclone doesn't die. 1 HP. Some real interesting math on that one. Cyclone will be repaired to full. So not a great start to the Blink Stalker pressure. Clem just blinks into the first tank. There's still the Cyclone on the high ground and so many Marines now. And there's still the Marines on the other side. I don't know. He's trying to cut down on those defenses using the Warp Prism as a ghetto Blink option. But a lot of damage done. And GuMiho already has Stim, by the way. Oh my... Oh, wow. That is some real smooth Warp Prism. He's schmoving right now, but the tank siege is... This is some incredibly good Blink slash... Not even Blink, just Stalker Prism micro, but... It's all in order to have some semblance of control over the situation. Snipes a tank? God. Wow. Okay. Oh, he's giving Max Packs a run for his prize money here. Well, if Max Pack showed up, he could compete for it, but for now, Clem will have to do. This is actually some of the best Stalker micro I've ever seen. I'm out here trying to prove skill issues, but the Marines come in! So, and this, Clem looking the other way for a second. 5 probes dead. More Stalkers fighting, trying to go for it, blinking back. I don't think that's in range. The Cyclone locked onto the Warp Prism, but the Marines actually stopped it from moving because they surrounded it, and it broke the lock. But the casual Marine drop just killed so many probes. 7 probes, and he gets out with the medevac. And now the tank push is coming. Clem has Storm on the way, he has Charge on the way, he has +1 on the way, but none of it has been delivered. And without Shield Battery Overcharge, all he has, he can't blink on that. He has a bunch of bruised Stalkers against medevacs and Marines. There's just not enough units here. The Shield Battery's dead. I lied. The boys! GuMiho! Followed the boys! Storm, 2/3 of the way done. That is way too far up. He's got some Templar in the Prism. The tank is at the gates, literally. And Storm may complete, but, well, if he actually holds this with some incredible storms, GuMiho's taken quite a while to break through. The SCVs may just go home, like, hey, I was told we were fighting. GuMiho with the siege tank. They're thinking about a bunker push as well. Classic GuMiho. And the storms will wash over. But he parts the Red Sea. He comes back in. The Prism gun down. The Archon show up, but it's too late. And, percent. How, 100% GG. Clem is forced to tap out as the Terran army is just too strong. The Blinkstalker micro, incredible, but did not manage to get any other tech in time. Like, there was not Charge, there was not Storm. GuMiho hitting that sharp timing before, like, even with energy recharge, you need to finish Storm, and Storm is not cheap. All right, that's a lot of gas just to get the chance to cast Storm. So, the Templar Archives at 200, well, 150. Pretty sure. Storm at 200, and then a high tide. It's 450 gas to get 1 Storm. Past the Twilight, past the Blink. That is quite an investment. 1 base mined about 250 gas a minute, for reference. So, that is a lot of time set up in order to make Storm happen. And that's usually why we see the Mass Charge slot and the Colossi as the follow-up. I think Clem just kind of testing it out. Thought he might have a little more space than he ended up being able to deal with. But Game 3, Frostline. I like Snowpiercer as a name, but I don't think Trademarks did. But kind of a rare map to see. I've barely seen it during the tournament at all. Though most have been focused on the Zerg matchups, and any map that you're limited to like 4 bases or 5 is not great for Zerg. Though I'd be surprised if we get too many games that get to 4 bases in this matchup. Especially after how dominant, not really dominant, but how much it was clear Clem outplayed GuMiho past a certain stage in Game 1. And that's what I'll call it. Like, GuMiho got himself into a pretty good position, but couldn't capitalize on it. Partially because of Clem's micro, and partially because of Clem's decision-making. Like, GuMiho had the army to win the game, I think. But Clem never quite let him do so. I know, that sounds like kind of reductionist, but it really was Clem putting himself in the right spot. At great risk, that pays off. His micro, as expected, has been incredible. But last game, with that casual tank push, multiple times that Cyclone living with 1 HP. The backbone there. So close to just outright breaking through. So much of early game Protoss versus Terran relies on whether or not the Blinkstalkers win the game. Like, sometimes they just win the game. You're a little out of position with your siege tanks. Or, less dramatically, they get so much damage done you never actually can move out of your base. They'll just win the game. But probably as often, at least at the top level. They overcommit a little bit, you lose half of them, and you have no way to stop the tank push. And we saw something a little closer to the second thing in the previous match. So, one Rex expand in his main, in the probe. Wait, did he recall the probe? I kind of glossed over that. I love it. So, I don't know the math on recalling the probe, but I know emotionally it feels great. When your probe gets trapped in, especially if they maybe built a supply depot a little earlier just to do it. I think it evens out to being about the same as chrono boosting more probes. But Clem did recall as soon as he saw the probe was trapped, before the Reaper came out. Reminds me of Raynor playing Protoss and doing all the little things that he knows annoy Zerg. In this case, Clem, knowing how valuable these things are against Terran. And GuMiho knowing how to micro Reaper just fine. Well, oh my god. Wait. Oh, what? Not one, but two Reaper jumps. All right, well, interesting. Very clear that Clem thinks Blink is the way to go. That, or he has one build. Which, if you were to have one build in this matchup, it would be Blink. We haven't seen any attempt at, like, early Sentry or Stargate. Instead, Blink and a Robo to make sure he has options. Has that Warp Prism, and potentially Observers. And a bunch of Blink Stalkers. That's the important part. Medevac's out. GuMiho. Hey, everyone, hop in! Just picks up every Marine nearby. 8 Marines this time. Cyclone looking for an opportunity. Until Blink... awkward. Until Blink is done, it can pretty much move around with impunity. But Blink finishing up momentarily. Usually around 4:40 to 5 minutes, depending on chrono boost and exact timings. Didn't quite have the vision. But the medevac comes in. The Stalkers scrambling back to the main. He doesn't know this is here, but he knows. 1, it happened last game, and 2, this is exactly when you'd send something in. Blink 3, 2, 1, and GuMiho pulls back. Oh, he sniped the Observer! Filthy. Nicely done by GuMiho. Oh, Gumi bro. That's gonna be quite a Gumi blow to Clem. Those Blink Stalkers may just be a Gumi no. As he wants to maintain the status Gumi quo. Edit that out. Gonna try to boost the... Oh, he gets a lock. Blinks away. Oh, what? Crazy. Okay, gets the medevac. Observer taken down. Viking on deck. He's just waltzing across. Well, the Blink Stalkers. He has that one Blink Stalker in front to try to eat the tank damage, but then there's a second tank. And, well, Protoss don't eat very much. Without any mouths, of course. They're more like plants. Like solar power, like chlorophyll. Or whatever turns them blue. Not really relevant. Moving on. Vikings. Now on the ground. As solid counters to Stalkers. But GuMiho's just kind of hanging out here. The longer he waits in the center of the map, the more likely Clem's going to come up with a response. And with charge on the way, it's pretty clear what that response... Wow! GuMiho just started his triple threat. He just started Stim Combat Shielded +1. He was really feigning strength here. Now, this could have won the game if he managed to take a good fight against Blink Stalkers. But he is now over a minute out of his most important upgrades. So, correctly realizing that if he sticks around for... That's a nice location for siege tanks, isn't it? It's a beautiful spot. I think you can hit him with Stalkers from the other side, but I wouldn't try it. Like, have to get jammed in there. Knocks out another Observer. Third one of the game. And very much limits Clem's options. But Clem goes sideways. Fourth Nexus is on the way. What is up here? What is all this? Why are there so many doubloons on these maps? The Stalker's playing zone defense now. He's got him just sitting out right at the edge. He knows the map is dark and full of Terrans. And we've spotted that multiple times. I don't think you can land up here. Should be able to collect extra minerals. The medevac slips out. The Vikings kind of sharking around, ready to clear a path. GuMiho moving out. But, Probe anticipating exactly this. Observers in place. It's not until the tanks move out that Clem has to work. Without the tanks involved, Stalker just trots away. Oh, okay, there are the Stalkers. I was wondering if it was just charged lots. Until the tanks move out, GuMiho's not committed. The tanks are the important part. And he's gonna see it. And believe me, he sees it. He knows. Clem trying to close in on that medevac to the north side, but I think that's actually a high ground blocker there. So the tanks will re-siege. GuMiho will be set up in time to defend on the high ground, but the charge lots make it into the natural. Widow Mines will take a bite out of them, and Widow Mines underneath the force fields are very awkward. Blinks out of the mines. So far, Clem leveraging. Oh, the Warp Prism gets in. The Vikings on deck. Not exactly where they want to be right now with the Warp Prism flying free. 13 SCVs dead. Surprise GuMiho. He's lifting the Vikings now. But the Warp Prism gonna get pre-called here. Comes back, sips on a shield battery. The Observer is still in place spotting. Even though he just scanned to try to knock out observers. 19 SCVs dead. GuMiho, he's pretty much all in. Clem has such a great position, but he has to survive a greater supply of Terran. He has +2 almost done. Extended Thermal Lance about halfway there. Dark Shrine is on the way. 10 gates are done. So, one more Colossus and +2 weapons should be enough. But it comes down to the angle. That's a lot of Terran. And he just blunks in. Goes for the first tank. Warp Prism getting hit by the Vikings, but that draws fire. Colossus from the north side. Charge lots getting thinned out, but the Colossi are helping out so much from the back. And Clem, as Protoss goes to match point, dismantles GuMiho at every turn and crushes the final push. And now we're one game away from getting a Protoss champion. Not exactly what anyone expected going into this tournament, I think. But here we are. One of the most hated players by Protoss. Becoming the Protoss. I think hated is maybe a bit much. I think people don't hate Clem, but are disgruntled by his clear showing of he's just so good. He's too good, arguably. He exploits all the intricacies and the strengths of the game to an extent we have never seen before. And to an extent doing it as Protoss as well, though clearly a little bit shakier. Still not as much of a command of his units. But overall, superior to GuMiho in this series so far. And now one game away from being the first Protoss champion in quite a while. We're going into Amygdala for game number 4. What's really interesting, he committed from the start. He said he didn't like pick Protoss some of the way into the series. Like I said as well, is we may be at that stage where the top players will in this case it seems to always be Protoss. We have had not throughout the history of StarCraft 2 had a single player who kind of like a Protoss player who picked Terran in this sort of fashion. Though there haven't been too many examples. So initially Scarlet was the first player to do this. Back in ML, well, at least the first memorable one. Back in MLG. Ah, yes. Remember when MLG had real games? in like 2013, picking Protoss and doing like a massive charge lot all-in to beat DRG, which was mind-blowing at the time. And now we have Rainer and Clem playing legitimate, full-on macro games as Protoss against their own race, mostly. And I think part of it is understanding, and this is why playing random, I think, gives you a lot of perspective. Shout out to me, like and subscribe. Understanding the difficult and annoying parts of playing the other races. Like for Terran getting harassed while they try to do any sort of tank push. Even if it's just a little bit, just always be lurking with those stalkers. I think part of the reason Rainer and Clem have this success as well. I bet MaxPax could play. I think MaxPax is actually like top 16 as Terran, or pretty close to it on Europe. But the mechanical skill. Historically, Protoss doesn't need quite as much mechanical skill. It's much more about decision-making and outright control, like micro, as opposed to having thousands of APM. Zerg and Terran are just much more APM intensive in most, especially mid to late game cases. But that doesn't mean, it's just less obvious how to use that APM as Protoss, I think. Part of it is just they have less units because they all cost more supply, so the APM is just lower. But I think because Rainer and Clem are the two, in the world, the most mechanically strong players, they can translate the vast majority of that. Like, Michael Jordan might not have been incredible at baseball, but he's still pretty good. And it's a little closer, more like playing a different position in basketball as opposed to a whole nother game here. As both Rainer and Clem translating that raw mechanical skill into some very competent Protoss play. No, we're all waiting for the day when somebody picks Terran instead. Or Zerg. Zerg probably the hardest to switch to from Terran to Protoss, just because it's so different mechanically. And a lot of Zerg is just, you know, injects and creep spread, and the production mechanics are so different that I seriously doubt we'll get too many players even considering that. Though Terran is the simplest in terms of mechanics. I'm not saying it's the simplest to understand and practice, not the simplest to execute. Before you get upset, and I don't mean to upset the Terrans any more than usual, which is a lot, but but Terran, that's the reason why Terran is the pick by over 50% of new players. Not just the campaign, but the mechanics are your more standard RTS. You build buildings, you queue up units. Everything works kind of how it would even if you're playing Command and Conquer Age of Empires. Whereas Warp Gate and Larva are very different for Protoss and for Zerg. But with all that said, we have a game happening. GuMiho did a proxy Rex. It wasn't that exciting, so I didn't really want to get distracted by it because I knew I wouldn't be able to get back on topic. But the proxy Rex, getting a good scout. It killed 2 probes. And now Clem, blink, and a 3rd. GuMiho with a no starport this time. Instead of a starport, he's just doing an all-out tank push. Ooh. Speaking of Command and Conquer, it's just Marines and tank. He didn't even build a starport. This is to maximize the amount of Marines he could cover his tanks with. Oh, Gumi, bro. A Blitzkrieg build. As he's just gonna hit with so many units. So, this is a very brute force. Is he hidden behind? Well, I don't know if that's intentional, but it is hilarious. Oh. And because the little dish is not like a permanent fixture, it doesn't register as the probe being behind it. You don't have like the little X-ray outline, which is kind of amazing. I don't know how intentional that is. Yeah, I'll give Clem the benefit of the doubt and say it is. And of course, it still shows up on the minimap. Has he spotted? He saw 2 racks. He doesn't really know the extent of this yet, though. He's only now going to be learning it. There's a few stalkers out there. Reaper coming in. Gonna get taken down before he can get close. And, oh, the tanks. 3 tanks now. And there's a cyclone that's watching at the watchtower. Clem did not check the watchtower for this. So that means GuMiho knows exactly when to siege up. And against just stalkers, there's no point. 3 siege tanks unsieged are still fine. And a cyclone, he gets a volley, but almost kills a stalker. Clem really trying to buy time. He only has 3 gates right now. That's not enough production. These tanks just waltzing up. Charge isn't done, and the tanks are going to be in range of the Nexus. The shield battery's there, but what are you gonna do? Overcharge? No! Overcharge. GuMiho sieges up with 4 tanks. Charge is done. But those are still Marines. He actually gets in front of one of the tanks, target firing the stalkers on the back line. The Marines are gunning down the Zealots. And Clem gets kind of close to breaking, but he lost almost all of his stalkers. He doesn't have the level of production. The gates are opening up. He's up to 7. But he doesn't have the money now. Gonna start losing probes. There's no alternative base. GuMiho with this off-center timing. It both preempted Blink aggression by having so many units, and it will punish Clem for not realizing the extent of the Marine tank. Clem was probably preparing for a drop of some kind, like... Oh no. Oh, it's not... It was so close, but this is the kind of push that only gets... Like, if you fail to break it once, it only gets harder from there on out. +1 is done. There's no other attack on the way. Clem expands to the north side. There's an Immortal. The siege tank's targeted. It gets a hit or 2 off. But more Marines trickling up. The charge lot's finished +1. So, well, oh my. He's not dead. He still has probes. He still has the 3rd. Some of the Marines are now coming from the north side. Clem is holding on by the tiniest thread. But GuMiho has no real follow-up. He still doesn't have a starport. He just started. He's gonna break out. Partially because some of the reinforcements are going the wrong way. Oh, wait. He does have a starport. The Marines are using the tank to tank. And Clem somehow lives. For now. Yeah, this is not enough units. The +1, the force field. Good luck with that. The Zerg rocks are now taken down. Or bled out, more accurately. A scan. He didn't know about that? Thought he had Marines over there. GuMiho realizes. Though he'll also realize that it was just taken, not... Wow, Clem lives. Honestly, I was a little surprised he didn't GG, but here we are. The force field's actually locking in some of these units. Not sure who's trapped in here with who. The Zealots have to go around, which is kind of problematic. But the +1 Zealots are quite effective. Clem loses another fight. There goes an Observer. Gonna try to pop the sentries. Gets one. And the second one is taken out. That's a lot of gas. Oh, but Clem with Blink Stalkers. Possibly the most dangerous player in the tournament with Blink Stalkers. Is somehow holding on, and he's trying to keep GuMiho busy, because we already saw that once we get to the later stages of the game, GuMiho struggles. His Marine Marauder micro isn't nearly at the level of his opponent. He relies on, like, great builds and great execution, but the pinpoint micro like this is not where GuMiho thrives. Well, +2 ground weapons. Clem has somehow survived. And is actually not in a terrible spot. He's got Colossi on the way. +2 is a big deal. We already saw that +1 upgrade really made the difference recently. Couple charge lots waiting. It's still a very thin budget for Clem. He has the production, he just doesn't have the income. He's got a couple charge lots ready to run in. Oh god, that's a lot of Terran. Does he even have a Colossus? He's about to have 1. The charge lots get into the 3rd base, are slicing up SCVs. Chutoy Depot working as intended. Force fields buy a little more time. Colossus moving up. Another set of force fields. But the Marauders, the tickle beams from the sentries are helping a bit. And the charge lots finding decent SCV kills. But it's just sentries and stalkers. And a Colossus, yes, don't ignore that. But he takes out most of the... He can get that one meta... Oh, he targeted the wrong one! He missed one volley. If he gets that medevac, that's such a huge deal. Once again, Clem's so close. But the medevac gets away. And now reinforcements are coming across. The charge lots, there's still some SCVs traumatized by the experience and not mining. Finally going back to work now. Observer spots the entire drop loading up. Extended thermal lance is done. Clem drops out. GuMiho can just go through the rocks if he wants. Gonna take down that last charge lot. And moving around this center area, it knocks out the observer. Another charge lot. Clem is trying to keep some pressure on. He's trying to keep GuMiho busy at all to buy some more time. Because he's got 4 bases now. He's back in the economic lead. But his army hasn't caught up. The Marines and Marauders coming through the rocks down the center. Infantry armor level 1. What? And then just drops over. Interesting. Not sure what the thought process was there. The Colossi, kind of an awkward... Oh, no. Wait. Oh, no. Oh, Colossus is caught. Taking the wrong path. One goes down. But the Vikings are intercepted. The Colossi, but the Marauders from the back. Energy recharge on the shield battery. Sentries popped by a mine. Marauders close in. Colossi crumble. And there's just not enough to stop them. The Marauders are rolling in. Charge lots forced. The Marauders back again, but there's almost no anti of the Vikings. Kill off the Colossus. And again, Clem left with just not quite enough. GuMiho finds the timing. And Clem honestly living like about 4 more minutes than I ever expected. GuMiho with a great tank push timing. But Clem holding on. You cannot let him. Really feeling like the Terran version as well. Like, you cannot let him live. Do not sleep on Clem. Because you might not wake up. You'll wake up dead. God, his micro's so good, but just misread the build a bit. I think if he, instead of committing, if he knew it was all in like that, I don't think he realized there was no starport until it was too late. If he just backed off and got another round of charge lots and expanded to the north side, he may have been able to crush the push. But now we're all tied up 2-2. Clem, still 1 game away from giving us a Protoss champion, and GuMiho 1 game away from beating another Protoss to claim a back-to-back Homestory Cup Grand Finals. Either way, will be decided on the reef. Game 5. Abyssal Reef. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Be awesome if you enjoy the games. You like and subscribe. Check out Take TV for more Homestory Cup and StarCraft 2 on a regular basis. Oh, what an exhausting series. It hasn't even been that long, but they've crammed a lot of action into these games. PvT, for better or worse, is a very early game-oriented matchup now. It's always been like on the ladder and above. The focus has always been for Terrans on making sure you keep the Protoss from getting to that very hard to deal with splash damage composition. And for Protoss players to either stop the Terrans with your own offense and mostly blink, or holding on long enough to build that right army that most Terrans, including GuMiho, really struggle with. So, we'll see what the pick is here on Abyssal Reef. First probe. Hello. So annoying. But to be expected. Wait, did he actually see the gases? Kind of important to look for those. I'm gonna take a look around. Gonna try to get out. And on this side of the map, the add-on gap will... Oh, wow. So spiteful. SCV pulls off for just a second, tries to get some real damage. Factory is on the way. Double gas again. Ever since game 1, GuMiho has been really focused on it. And it's paid off for the most part. At depth first. Will we see the Twilight? 5 out of 5? Think so. 3, 2, 1. Twilight Council. 5th game in a row. And I think you already know what it's going to be past that. Blink, Robo, a couple more gates, and then a 3rd. The build. And honestly, even less surprising considering, like I mentioned, Clem, not a Protoss main. And despite having great mechanics in micro, build orders are important. And if you have one that works most of the time, you'll just focus on that, as opposed to having like a whole menagerie of different styles. Medevac on the way. Not going to be the same build as last game. Instead, focused on that early pressure. Cyclone used to poke and prod. Actually walling off the high ground area. Blink has begun. Chrono boosted. There's a lot of decent tank positions on this map as well. But same thing could be said, I guess, for Blink Stalkers. Finding an angle. GuMiho pulling the Marines across. Cyclone was looking to snipe off maybe a hallucinated Phoenix. If there happened to be a Stargate unit. Maybe a real Phoenix, but doesn't end up happening. Blink halfway there. Gateway's following up. Siege tank. Where is it? Siege tank coming across as well. 4 Marines. The least committed drop yet. Yes, but you do have a drop. So that's something, I guess. Thinking Adept? Yeah, Adept got caught by the Cyclone, unfortunately. And without Blink, the Cyclone can do a lot of damage. There's a lot of range on that lock-on. Blink is nearly done, but Clem really doesn't want to be caught at the top of this ramp. He's in a very awkward spot here. Blink not quite done. The siege tank's already here. I think the Shade just spotted it. The tank will siege. There's a Viking, knocks out the Observer. First priority at all times. Blink 12 seconds up, but he's already knocking on the gateway's door. Clem? Viking hits the deck. Siege tank will unsiege. Blink is done. And he blinks it, goes for the tank, picked up into the... Oh no, the medevac dodges it. Back down, goes for the tank. The SCV's repair. The tactical boys. He gets the tank, but he may have just lost the tournament. Oh no. And another tank shows up. All that work for almost nothing. The probes are slaughtered. GuMiho's done it. The 2-time, the back-to-back Homestory Cup champion. Clem blunked too far. And GuMiho claims victory. GG, WP. Protoss put down again by the Admiral. Clem with such a commitment on that last blink, and GuMiho with a great timing and great micro on the pickup. If that tank had remained sieged, I think Clem just kills it and starts working on everything else. It would have hurt, but not nearly as bad as spending 3 or 4 volleys just trying to deal with it. GuMiho's decisive Terran timing. That was a Clem build right there. So, feel like maybe should split the win. But GuMiho, the Admiral, once again claiming victory, especially carried by his dominance in Terran versus Terran. The tactical genius. There's a reason he got promoted to such a high rank. So, Clem falls. But puts up probably the best showing of any Protoss player in the tournament. After beating the last Protoss as well. How appropriate. But hopefully you enjoyed something a little bit different. Do you want to see players be off racing like this? Potentially force tournaments into... I don't think that's a good idea, but we'll see. But what are your thoughts? And I hope you enjoyed. I hope this made your day a little bit better. Thank you for watching. If you got the means of motivation, be awesome. Check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So I'll see you next time. Good luck. Have fun. Stay chill. Congratulations to the Admiral.